Albany, Georgia. A retired South Georgia schoolteacher pleaded guilty to possessing child sexual abuse material, CSAM, after authorities located hidden cameras inside his rental property's bathroom filming young children bathing and undressing. David Swanson, 61, pleaded guilty to one count of possessing child pornography before U.S. District Judge Louis Sands on February 22. Swanson faces a maximum of 20 years in prison to be followed by a maximum lifetime of supervised release and a $250,000 fine. In addition, Swanson will have to register as a sex offender upon release from prison. Swanson is not eligible for parole. Crimes against children are despicable, and it's unthinkable when teachers or other trusted people are guilty of harming kids, said U.S. Attorney Peter D. Leary. Our office prosecutes child predators to the fullest extent of the law. I am thankful for the excellent investigative work by our local and federal law enforcement partners that helped stop a child predator. According to court documents, a concerned citizen notified Ray City Police in March 2023 that she found a hidden camera in the home she rented from Swanson. The responding officer located a camera hidden in the bathroom's ceiling plugged into an extension cord that ran through the attic. The officer also found 2 more cameras hidden in electrical outlets in the same bathroom. The SD cards from the cameras contained images of 4 children between the ages of 1 and 12 years old taking baths, changing clothes, and using the toilet. There was also a video clip of Swanson stepping on the toilet, reaching towards the ceiling and then placing a small black object in his pocket. All of the images were recorded between January 21, 2023, and February 28, 2023. Authorities checked Swanson's other rental properties in Lowndes County and Berrien County and did not find additional cameras at the other residences. A search warrant was executed at Swanson's Valdosta home on March 3, 2023. Agents found approximately 750 images and videos of child sexual abuse material, CSAM, and other incriminating evidence on his electronic devices. Some of the material included children nude in bathrooms, as well as minors engaged in sexually explicit conduct. The cameras were still set to record when they were found and removed from the home. This includes the CSAM that was downloaded as well as the CSAM images that he produced through the use of the hidden cameras. Swanson had recently retired as a teacher in the Lowndes County school system. This case was brought as part of Project Safe Childhood, a nationwide initiative to combat the growing epidemic of child sexual exploitation and abuse, launched in May 2006 by the Department of Justice. Led by the U.S. Attorney's offices and the DOJ's Child Exploitation and Obscenity Section, Project Safe Childhood. The case was investigated by Berrien County Sheriff's Office, Lowndes County Sheriff's Office, Ray City Police Department and Homeland Security Investigations. Assistant U.S. Attorney Crawford Seals is prosecuting the case. Please subscribe below and help us to grow to a 50,000 community strong. New Orleans, Louisiana. Tyki Clayton, age 21 of Lutcher, Louisiana was sentenced on February 21, 2024 by U.S. District Judge Jane Trish Milozzo to 36 months incarceration after he previously pled guilty to possession of a machine gun, in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Sections 922(o) and 924(a)(2, announced U.S. Attorney Dwayne Evans. Judge Milozzo also ordered that Clayton be placed on supervised release for 3 years following his release from prison. Clayton was also ordered to pay a mandatory $100 special assessment fee. According to court records, on March 28, 2022, Clayton was the passenger in a vehicle that did not come to a full stop at a stop sign. A St. James Parish deputy stopped the vehicle and saw Clayton in the front passenger seat reaching between his legs into a backpack. The deputy learned that Clayton had an outstanding arrest warrant and detained him inside a police unit. Law enforcement discovered a Glock firearm equipped with an autosear, making it function as a machine gun, as well as a loaded gun magazine during a search of Clayton's vehicle. The case was investigated by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives and the St. James Parish Sheriff's Office. This case was prosecuted by Assistant U.S. Attorney Mike Trummel of the Violent Crime Unit. Charleston, West Virginia. Alexandria Jasmine Estep, 22, of Charleston, was sentenced today to 4 years and 2 months in prison, to be followed by 3 years of supervised release, for conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine. Estep admitted to her role in a drug trafficking organization, DTO, that operated in the Charleston area. According to court documents and statements made in court, Estep was responsible for the distribution of nearly 20 pounds of methamphetamine while she participated in the drug trafficking conspiracy between October 2022 and January 2023. Initially, Estep regularly obtained multiple pounds of methamphetamine from a Charleston supplier. She would then redistribute the methamphetamine to others in the Charleston area. In November 2022, Estep stopped dealing with the Charleston supplier and arranged to buy multiple pounds of methamphetamine from a co-conspirator. On November 29, 2022, the co-conspirator delivered the methamphetamine by vehicle to Estep's Charleston residence. Estep conducted the transaction with an additional co-conspirator who was in the vehicle during the delivery. Estep is among 32 individuals indicted as a result of Operation Smoke and Mirrors, a major drug trafficking investigation that has yielded the largest methamphetamine seizure in West Virginia history. Baltimore, Maryland. David Quillen, 37, of Ocean View, Delaware, a correctional officer at the Eastern Correctional Institution, ECI, in Westover, Maryland, pleaded guilty today to conspiring to obstruct justice and to destruction of records, related to covering up evidence that a fellow officer at ECI had unlawfully assaulted an inmate. The guilty plea was announced by Eric L. Barron, United States Attorney for the District of Maryland, Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, and Acting Special Agent in Charge, Joseph Rothrock of the FBI Baltimore Field Office. According to his guilty plea, on July 12, 2021, while working at ECI, Quillen learned that another officer had used force against an inmate. Upon learning of the incident, Quillen responded to the scene with a video camera and began recording the inmate. While Quillen filmed him, the inmate asserted that he had been assaulted by a correctional officer, Officer Samuel Warren, for no reason. The inmate also cried, and was visibly injured, with blood on his face. After Quillen stopped filming, he and other officers watched the video Quillen had filmed. While watching the video, a supervisory officer commented that the video did not look good for Warren and indicated that the video should be deleted. Warren agreed, and Quillen and other officers agreed to lie about the deletion. Understanding that the video contained evidence that Warren's use of force against the inmate had been unlawful, Quillen deleted the video. Following the deletion, Quillen lied about what happened to the video, including to supervisors at ECI, and to state and federal investigators. Warren has since admitted that he unlawfully assaulted the inmate and has pleaded guilty to federal offenses related to that assault. Quillen faces a maximum sentence of 5 years in federal prison for the conspiracy to obstruct justice and a maximum of 20 years in federal prison for destruction of records. U.S. District Judge Richard D. Bennett has scheduled sentencing for May 22, 2024. East St. Louis, Illinois. An Effingham County man is facing criminal charges in southern Illinois for illegally possessing firearms even though he is prohibited under federal law. James O. Krause, 42, is facing 1 count of possession of a firearm by a prohibited person, 1 count of illegal possession of a machine gun, 2 counts of possession of an unregistered firearm and 1 count of illegal importation of a firearm. Individuals with domestic violence and other abusive convictions cannot lawfully possess firearms due to the increased safety risks to our communities, and offenders will be held accountable, said U.S. Attorney Rochelle Aud Crow. According to the charging document, Krause is accused of possessing the firearms in November 2023. Due to a prior domestic violence conviction, Kraus is unable to legally possess firearms. The government alleges that Kraus illegally possessed dozens of firearms, including an automatic weapon, multiple short-barreled rifles and silencers. Individuals convicted of domestic violence cannot possess firearms and will face serious consequences for manufacturing, possessing, or importing these firearms. Privately made firearms, PMFs, are commonly referred to as ghost guns and can be difficult to trace. Manufacturing devices to convert firearms to automatic weapons is a tremendous threat to our communities, stated Kansas City Field Division Special Agent in Charge, Bernard Hansen. Identifying and prosecuting persons unlawfully converting and possessing machine guns, as well as unregistered silencers, is a focus of the ATF, and persons will face serious consequences for possessing them. As outlined in the indictment, the government is seeking forfeiture of Kraus' 9 commercially manufactured firearms, 7 silencers, and thousands of rounds of ammunition. In addition, Kraus is accused of manufacturing unregistered ghost guns with a 3D printer, and if convicted must forfeit 11 privately made firearms, including 4 pistols and 7 rifles. The government is also seeking forfeiture of Kraus' computer, 3D printer, and other firearm manufacturing tools. An indictment is merely a formal charge against a defendant. Under the law, a defendant is presumed to be innocent of a charge until proved guilty beyond a reasonable doubt to the satisfaction of a jury. If convicted, Kraus could face up to 15 years imprisonment and/or fines up to $250,000. ATF is leading the investigation with assistance from ISP, HSI, U.S. Customs and Border Protection and U.S. Postal Inspection Service. Assistant U.S. Attorney John Trippi is prosecuting the case. We really appreciate you guys watching our crime videos on this channel. Please help us to expand our reach on the YouTube network by liking and subscribing below. Washington. An Ohio man has been arrested for assaulting law enforcement and other charges during the breach of the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. His actions and the actions of others disrupted a joint session of the U.S. Congress convened to ascertain and count the electoral votes related to the 2020 presidential election. Cleophas Delaney, 63, of Columbus, Ohio, is charged in a criminal complaint filed in the District of Columbia with felony offenses of obstruction of law enforcement during civil disorder and assaulting, resisting, or impeding certain officers. In addition to the felonies, Delaney is charged with multiple misdemeanor offenses, including entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds, disorderly and disruptive conduct in a restricted building or grounds, engaging in physical violence in a restricted building or grounds, disorderly or disruptive conduct in the Capitol grounds or buildings, act of physical violence in the Capitol grounds or buildings. Delaney was arrested by the FBI today in Columbus and will make his initial appearance in the Southern District of Ohio. According to court documents, Delaney was identified in an open-source video among a crowd of rioters gathered to the west of the U.S. Capitol building around the Peace Monument on January 6, 2021. At about 12:50 p.m., rioters bypassed the first line of barricades and approached a second line of barricades that were manned by uniformed U.S. Capitol police officers. The second line of barricades was constructed of metal bike rack barriers, physically linked end to end, and reinforced with dark-colored plastic mesh safety fencing behind the metal bike racks. The fence was clearly marked with large white, "Area Closed," with bold red lettering. Upon approaching the barricades, the crowd, with Delaney at the front, immediately became confrontational with the officers in the area. The crowd pushed and pulled on the barricades as the now vastly outnumbered officers attempted to keep the crowd back. At about 12:54 p.m., rioters broke through the barricades, driving the bike racks directly into the police officers. One officer was driven to the ground and suffered a concussion. Another officer was pressed down under the barricade and struggled to avoid being pulled out into the mob. With the police officers under attack, Delaney, for his part, picked up and moved a metal bike rack to the side, opening a pathway for the mob behind him to surge forward. As the crowd surged forward, officers retreated towards the building, and Delaney and the crowd of rioters approached another line of barricades. The crowd quickly broke through, allowing the mob to move forward and flood the West Plaza. Delaney remained at the front of the mob as the crowd chanted, "USA, USA, USA," and "Our House." At about 1:35 p.m., court documents say that the situation between the rioters and police began to escalate as the rioters fought to obtain control of a bike rack. He reached over several rioters and grabbed the top of the barricade that was now raised in the air and, with the aid of his fellow rioters, pushed the barricade into the police officers. As Delaney and the rioters forcefully pushed the bike rack forward, the bike rack made physical contact with several officers. After the melee, Delaney continued to watch as rioters attacked police officers and, eventually, broke through the police line. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia and the Department of Justice National Security Division's Counterterrorism Section are prosecuting this case. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Ohio provided valuable assistance. The FBI's Cincinnati and Washington field offices are investigating this case. The U.S. Capitol Police and the Metropolitan Police Department provided valuable assistance. In the 37 months since January 6, 2021, more than 1,313 individuals have been charged in nearly all 50 states for crimes related to the breach of the U.S. Capitol, including more than 469 individuals charged with assaulting or impeding law enforcement, a felony. The investigation remains ongoing. Thank you. Maybe now is a good time to like and subscribe before we continue with USA Crime Roundup. St. Louis U.S. District Judge Audrey G. Fleissig on Friday sentenced a man who was shot while dealing drugs to 7 years in prison. Before we move on, a quick reminder to hit the like and subscribe button below. Jeremiah Hill was selling drugs outside a market in the 12,000 block of Bellefontaine Road in St. Louis County on December 10, 2021. During a dispute with two men in a vehicle about the amount of marijuana he sold them, Hill pulled out a 9mm pistol and pointed it at the driver. The passenger pulled his own gun and the driver tried to grab his. Hill and the driver were both hit in the exchange of gunfire. ShotSpotter indicated 30 shots had been fired. When police arrived, Hill was lying on the ground, injured, and was taken to the hospital. Police found drugs including marijuana, fentanyl and oxycodone in Hill's belongings at the scene. Hill, 21, of Bellefontaine Neighbors, Missouri, pleaded guilty in November to 1 count of possession and brandishing of a firearm in furtherance of a drug trafficking crime. The St. Louis County Police Department investigated the case. Assistant U.S. Attorney Catherine Hogue prosecuted the case. Burlington, Vermont. The Office of the United States Attorney for the District of Vermont announced that on February 22, 2024, a federal grand jury returned an indictment charging Brandon Anderson, 34, of Greenwood, Indiana, with 2 counts of impersonation of an officer or employee of the United States and 1 count of making a false statement to a department or agency of the United States. Anderson entered a plea of not guilty to the charges during an arraignment on February 23, 2024 before United States Magistrate Judge Kevin J. Doyle. Following his arraignment, Anderson remained on pretrial supervision subject to conditions of release. According to court records, Anderson, while wearing a tactical uniform with black body armor and a holstered firearm, impersonated a federal law enforcement official on 2 occasions. Anderson was not in fact a federal law enforcement official during either occasion, but instead was a privately contracted security guard for a federal agency. In addition, investigation of Anderson revealed that, in becoming a security guard for the federal agency, he falsely stated that he had served in the United States Marines and received an honorable discharge, when in fact he had not served in the Marines at all. The United States Attorney's Office emphasizes that an indictment contains allegations only and that Anderson is presumed innocent until and unless proven guilty. Anderson faces up to 5 years of imprisonment if convicted of false statement and up to 3 years of imprisonment if convicted of false personation. The actual sentence, however, would be determined by the court with guidance from the advisory United States sentencing guidelines and the statutory sentencing factors. United States Attorney Nicholas P. Karest commended the investigatory efforts of Homeland Security Investigations, the Chittenden County Sheriff's Office, and the South Burlington Police Department. The prosecutor is Assistant United States Attorney Andrew C. Gilman. Anderson is represented by Assistant Federal Public Defender Sarah Pauls. Thank you for lasting this long on our USA Crime Files update. Please subscribe below. Help us to expand our YouTube reach worldwide. Erie, Pennsylvania, a resident of Dearborn Heights, Michigan, has been indicted by a federal grand jury in Erie on federal charges relating to the sexual exploitation of children, United States Attorney Eric G. Olshan announced today. The 3-count indictment named Matthew James Chanteloy, 45, as the sole defendant. According to the indictment presented to the court, from in and around October 2023 to in and around January 2024, Chanteloy used, persuaded, induced, and enticed a minor to engage in sexually explicit conduct for the purpose of producing a visual depiction of that conduct. The indictment also charges Chanteloy with possessing and transporting child sexual abuse material in interstate commerce. The law provides for a maximum total sentence of not less than 15 years and up to 60 years in prison, a fine of up to $750,000, or both. Under the federal sentencing guidelines, the actual sentence imposed would be based upon the seriousness of the offenses and the prior criminal history, if any, of the defendant. Assistant United States Attorney Christian A. Trabold is prosecuting this case on behalf of the government. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, Pennsylvania State Police, New York State Police, and Dearborn Heights Police Department conducted the investigation leading to the indictment in this case. This case was brought as part of Project Safe Childhood, a nationwide initiative launched in May 2006 by the Department of Justice to combat the growing epidemic of child sexual exploitation and abuse. Led by the United States Attorney's Offices and the Criminal Division's Child Exploitation and Obscenity Section, CEOs, Project Safe Childhood marshals federal, state, and local resources to locate, apprehend, and prosecute individuals who sexually exploit children, and to identify and rescue victims. For more information about Project Safe Childhood, please visit www.justice.government/PSC. An indictment is an accusation. A defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. This defendant previously convicted of indecent assault and battery on a child younger than 14. Boston, a registered sex offender was sentenced today in federal court in Boston for receiving and possessing child sexual abuse material, CSAM, via multiple groups on a messaging app. Angel Figueroa, 51, of Fall River, was sentenced by U.S. District Court Judge Indira Talwani to 15 years in prison and 5 years of supervised release. He was also ordered to pay restitution to several victims. In October 2023, Figueroa pleaded guilty to 1 count of receipt of child pornography and 1 count of possession of child pornography. Figueroa was identified as an active member of at least 4 messaging applications where CSAM was being disseminated. A forensic examination of Figueroa's cell phone revealed approximately 523 images and 72 videos of CSAM depicting children as young as infants. At least 1 image depicted bondage of a child younger than 2 years old. Figueroa admitted that he downloaded, saved, and viewed CSAM using apps on his cell phone and had been doing so for 1 or 2 years. Figueroa is a registered sex offender based upon a 2013 Massachusetts state court conviction for indecent assault and battery on a child under 14 years old. Acting United States Attorney Joshua S. Levi, Michael J. Kroll, Special Agent in charge of Homeland Security Investigations, in New England, and Fall River Chief of Police Paul Govan made the announcement. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Jessica Soto and Megan C. Cleary of the Major Crimes Unit and J. Mackenzie Duane of the Criminal Division prosecuted the case. This case was brought as part of Project Safe Childhood, a nationwide initiative to combat the growing epidemic of child sexual exploitation and abuse, launched in May 2006 by the Department of Justice. Led by the U.S. Attorney's offices and the DOJ's Child Exploitation and Obscenity Section, Project Safe Childhood marshals federal, state, and local resources to locate, apprehend, and prosecute individuals who exploit children, as well as identify and rescue victims. For more information about Project Safe Childhood, please visit https://www.justice.government/PSC. Thank you. My name is Abby. We hope you are getting value watching our crime videos. We really appreciate you guys returning week to week. Do continue to like, share and subscribe below. Salt Lake City, Utah. A federal grand jury in Salt Lake City, Utah, returned an indictment February 21, 2024, charging a Salt Lake City man for allegedly robbing a credit union in West Valley City, Utah. According to court documents, Joey Sean Simmond, 44, of Salt Lake City, entered Cypress Credit Union in West Valley City on February 10, 2024, and passed the teller a handwritten note that read, "I got a gun, hand over the money or you're dead." The teller complied. Simmons then took the money and left the bank on foot, leaving the note behind. Management at Cypress Credit Union then called 911 and a West Valley City police officer responded. That same evening, at 4:18 p.m. Unified Police Department of Greater Salt Lake received a phone call from a person identifying themselves as a relative of Simmons. The caller reported that Simmons had been at their residence and claimed to have robbed Cypress Credit Union 2 hours prior. UPD responded to the area and located Simmons a short distance from the caller's residence. West Valley City Police also responded and Simmons was identified as the same person in the robbery using a suspect description and surveillance images from inside Cypress Credit Union. Simmons was taken into custody and a large amount of cash was seized during his arrest. Simmons is charged with credit union robbery. His initial court appearance on the indictment was held on February 23, 2024, before a U.S. magistrate judge at the Orangey Hatch United States District Courthouse in downtown Salt Lake City. A 2-day jury trial is scheduled for April 26, 2024. U.S. Attorney Trina Higgins, of the District of Utah made the announcement. An FBI task force officer with the West Valley City Police Department is investigating the case. Assistant United States Attorney Carlos Esqueda of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Utah is prosecuting the case. This case is part of Project Safe Neighborhoods, PSN, a program bringing together all levels of law enforcement and the communities they serve to reduce violent crime and gun violence, and to make our neighborhoods safer for everyone. On May 26, 2021, the department launched a violent crime reduction strategy strengthening PSN based on these core principles: fostering trust and legitimacy in our communities, supporting community-based organizations that help prevent violence from occurring. Fresno, California. As a result of Operation Fraud Street Mafia, a Kern Valley State Prison, KVSP, inmate has been charged in 2 separate federal complaints with drug trafficking and COVID-19 fraud. 7 defendants in California and Maryland are also charged in the 2 schemes. Making the announcement today are U.S. Attorney Philip A. Talbot, DA Special Agent in Charge Brian M. Clark, Acting Special Agent in Charge Mark Remley of the FBI Sacramento Field Office, and IRS Criminal Investigation Oakland Field Office Acting Special Agent in Charge Michael Mosley. It is remarkable that a prison inmate coordinated with others on the outside to distribute over 100 pounds of methamphetamine into the community, said U.S. Attorney Talbot. But that apparently was not enough. He also conspired to pursue over $500 million in federal tax credits that were meant to help struggling businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic. The U.S. Attorney's Office is committed to combating organized crime, whether it is drug trafficking or theft of taxpayer money, and whether it is committed inside or outside of prisons. This extensive drug trafficking investigation exposed a massive fraud operation being conducted from behind bars. As a prison inmate engineered a criminal network from coast to peddle poison, law enforcement put their collective authorities together to dismantle this organization brick by brick, said DA Special Agent in Charge Clark. Strong law enforcement partnerships built on action are an invaluable tool to ensure prison is no longer a place where violent criminals can operate without consequence. I applaud the work of our California COVID-19 fraud strike force and the hard-working prosecutors, agents, and analysts in the Eastern District of California who conducted this investigation, said Michael C. Galdo, Department of Justice Director of COVID-19 Fraud Enforcement. The department will continue to work with our law enforcement partners around the country to uncover these schemes and hold those accountable who attempt to steal from the American people, whether they are hiding overseas or, like the allegations in this investigation, operating conspiracies from behind bars. The criminal enterprises we battle today are more sophisticated than ever before, said FBI Acting Special Agent in Charge Remily. From interstate drug trafficking rings to massive fraud schemes aimed at stealing pandemic relief funds meant for struggling American businesses, the criminal conspiracies we face are complex and ever-changing. Despite these challenges, the dedicated men and women of the FBI and our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners will continue to diligently investigate these criminals. We will use every investigative technique at our disposal to disrupt their activities and bring them to justice. Christopher Thomas and his associates being in federal custody are a result of an incredibly detailed, multi-agency OSEDTIF investigation and is a critical milestone in this case, said IRS Criminal Investigation Acting Special Agent in Charge Mosley. While incarcerated and with the help of his associates, Thomas is accused of leading a conspiracy to defraud taxpayers of over $550 million by falsely claiming COVID-19 employee retention credits. CI agents specialize in financial investigations and remain on the front lines of fighting fraud. According to court documents, in August 2022, the DEA began a wiretap investigation into a methamphetamine trafficking operation that was run out of the Kern Valley State Prison in Delano, California, by inmate Christopher Thomas, 36. Thomas has been incarcerated since December 2010 after being convicted of a gang-related first-degree murder. Thomas is a longtime member of the Main Street Mafia Crips, a street gang located in South Los Angeles. Agents reviewed recorded jail calls placed by Thomas on a prison-issued tablet to numerous romantic partners, family members, and other individuals believed to be involved in drug trafficking. Agents also intercepted Thomas sending and receiving text messages about what appeared to be a tax fraud scheme. The intercepted text messages contained screenshots of tax information for many businesses with tax refund amounts. This triggered the DEA to request assistance from IRS Criminal Investigation and the FBI. A DeSoto man who sex-trafficked women for more than a decade was sentenced last week to 30 years in federal prison, announced U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Texas Leah Simonton. Philip J. Collette, 34, was indicted in October 2023 and pleaded guilty later that month to conspiracy to commit sex trafficking through force, fraud, and coercion. He was sentenced Friday by U.S. District Judge Mark Pittman. Human trafficking is one of the most egregious crimes the HSI investigates, said Homeland Security Investigations Dallas Special Agent in Charge Lester A. Hayes Jr. HSI's role is simple. We will find and prosecute those who force victims into this degrading and inhumane lifestyle. According to court documents, Mr. Collette trafficked multiple women, brutally beating several. According to court documents, one victim told investigators that when she first met Mr. Collette, he gave her a fake name and asked her to spend the night with him. Believing they were embarking upon a dating relationship, she consented. He then drove her to a local motel and ordered her to go to work. That same night, she saw her first 2 commercial sex customers. Mr. Collette went on to advertise the victim's commercial sex services online and forced her to turn her proceeds over to him, threatening to hurt her if she did not make enough money for him. He forced her to use methamphetamine so that she could stay awake to maximize profits, and assaulted her on multiple occasions, including after she tried to leave. Homeland Security Investigations conducted the investigation with the assistance of the North Texas Trafficking Task Force. Assistant U.S. Attorney Brandy Wade prosecuted the case. San Diego, David Constantine, alleged mastermind of a scheme to steal more than $5 million in California unemployment benefits intended to help workers affected by the pandemic, appeared in federal court today following his extradition Monday to the United States from Romania. At today's hearing, U.S. Magistrate Judge Michael S. Berg ordered Constantine detained pending trial. The next hearing is scheduled for April 1, 2024, at 1:30 p.m. before U.S. District Judge Larry A. Burns. Constantine was indicted by a federal grand jury in October 2023 along with 13 others. In addition to the 4 counts of wire fraud conspiracy and wire fraud charges, the indictment also alleges that Constantine transmitted more than $128,000 in fraud proceeds to associates in Romania. Constantine was apprehended by Romanian authorities at the request of the United States on November 14, 2023. The United States also seized valuable assets connected to Constantine, and co-defendants in this case, Edward Buse, D6, and Florentina Sima, D7. The following agencies provided critical assistance in securing Constantine's arrest and extradition: Directorate for Combating Organized Crime, DCCO, Service for Countering of Organized Criminal Groups, Pitesti Brigade for Combating Organized Crime, BCCO Pitesti, Teleorman County Service for Countering Organized Crime, Romanian Gendarmerie Battalion, Romanian Ministry of Justice, and Romanian Criminal Investigative Directorate, Fugitive Unit. We thank Romanian authorities for their assistance in securing Mr. Constantine's arrest and for their continued efforts in support, said U.S. Attorney Tara McGrath. This case is being prosecuted by Assistant U.S. Attorneys Jessica Adeline Schulberg and Valerie Chu. The Justice Department's Office of International Affairs provided substantial assistance to secure the arrest and extradition from Romania of Constantine. Defendant Case Number 23 CR 2090 Lab David Constantine age, 28 Argeș County, Romania aka Vlad Alexandru Summary of Charges Title 18, USC Section 1349. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud Title 18, USC Section 1343. Wire fraud maximum penalty, 30 years in prison, $1 million fine Title 18 USC Section 1956. A. Laundering of monetary instruments maximum penalty, 20 years in prison and $500,000 fine or twice the value of the monetary instrument or funds involved in the transportation, transmission, or transfer, whichever is greater. The charges and allegations contained in an indictment or complaint are merely accusations, and the defendants are considered innocent unless and until proven guilty. Anchorage, Alaska. A Kodiak man was sentenced to over 17 years in prison for possessing a controlled substance with the intent to distribute and possessing multiple firearms as a felon. According to court documents, agents executed search warrants on Mark Nason's vehicle and residence in September 2022. Agents found a total of roughly 1.6 kilos of meth, 1.5 kilos of fentanyl and 70 grams of heroin, and 5 firearms in his vehicle and in his bedroom. Law enforcement also recovered over $56,800 in cash proceeds from the defendant's distribution of controlled substances. After his arrest, Nason reached out to associates and asked them to retrieve drugs from his storage units in Anchorage and sell the drugs to make money for his bail. Law enforcement located roughly 4.9 kilos of meth and 2.7 kilos of fentanyl that the defendant possessed with intent to sell. The sentencing memorandum alleges, in total, the defendant possessed over 1.3 million potentially lethal doses. At the time of this conduct, The defendant was previously convicted of multiple felonies starting at the age of 20. These felonies included theft, larceny, assault and misconduct involving firearms. The court cited the defendant's extensive criminal history, the impact of fentanyl on small communities and a priority to protect the community from potential future crimes when delivering the sentence. U.S. District Court Judge Joshua Kindred stated, "The distinction here is, though I appreciate his attempts to show how he has changed, at some point in time, someone's criminal history becomes so voluminous that you can't overlook it." The defendant is also required to serve 10 years supervised release as part of his sentence. The defendant has been incarcerated almost continuously since he was 20 years old and is a habitual violent offender, said U.S. Attorney S. Lane Tucker for the District of Alaska. "My office will continue to work together with our law enforcement partners to investigate and prosecute perpetrators who choose to commit illegal acts and pose a great public safety threat to Alaskans. Thank you. Maybe now is a good time to like and subscribe below. Help us to expand our reach on the YouTube network." Welcome back. I'm Abby. Methamphetamine trafficker who pleaded guilty on the eve of trial was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, announced U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Texas Leah Simonton. Christian Allen Mears, 45, was charged via criminal complaint in June 2023 and indicted the following month. On September 25, 2023, the morning his trial was set to begin, Mr. Mears pleaded guilty to conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute a controlled substance. He was sentenced Friday by U.S. District Judge Reed C. O'Connor. According to court documents, Mr. Mears operated his narcotics trafficking business out of a string of hotels, moving from hotel to hotel every few days to avoid detection by law enforcement. On June 14, 2023, law enforcement officers in Fort Worth detained Mr. Mears and a female associate following a traffic violation. Inside Mr. Mears' satchel, they found the key card to a nearby La Quinta Inn. His associate told officers there was methamphetamine stashed inside a bag in the hotel room. During a search of the room, officers found a Louis Vuitton bag stuffed with plastic baggies filled with more than 4,500 grams of meth, along with 2 firearms that had previously been reported stolen. Homeland Security investigations and the Fort Worth Police Department conducted the investigation. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Sean Smith and Frank Gatto prosecuted the case. Washington Ennis Jeverick, 42, a sergeant with the Metropolitan Police Department, MPD, pleaded guilty today in federal court to violating the constitutional rights of 27-year-old Antoine Gilmore by using excessive force, on August 25, 2021, in a police shooting that killed Mr. Gilmore. Jeverick also pleaded guilty to a charge of involuntary manslaughter under D.C. law. The plea was announced by U.S. Attorney Matthew M. Graves and FBI Assistant Director in Charge David Sundberg, of the Washington Field Office. U.S. District Court Judge Randolph Moss scheduled a sentencing hearing for July 1, 2024. According to documents filed with the court, the defendant willfully used unconstitutionally excessive and unreasonable force by shooting Mr. Gilmore. Specifically, shortly before 3 a.m. on August 25, 2021, the defendant and other MPD officers were dispatched to respond to a call for an armed man, later identified as Mr. Gilmore, who was either asleep or unconscious in the driver's seat of a car that was stopped at the intersection of New York Avenue and Florida Avenue, NE. The defendant approached the car and directed another officer to knock on its windows to rouse Mr. Gilmore. When Mr. Gilmore woke, the car moved forward several feet, stopped briefly, and then moved forward again. As it did so, the defendant fired his MPD-issued firearm at the car 4 times. The car rolled down New York Avenue, and the defendant fired at it 6 more times. 3 of the defendant's shots struck Mr. Gilmore, who died a short time later from his wounds. No other officer fired shots. Police officers are sworn to uphold the law and ensure the safety of the community, And we are grateful for the overwhelming majority of Metropolitan Police Department officers who do their difficult and dangerous jobs honorably, said U.S. Attorney Matthew M. Braves. But Officer Jeverick violated the Constitution and abused his position by recklessly using deadly force where none was necessary, resulting in the tragic and unjustified loss of Mr. Gilmore's life, a tragedy that has permanently changed the lives of Mr. Gilmore's family and friends. The U.S. Attorney's Office is committed to protecting the civil rights of everyone within the district and to holding accountable all who violate those rights. As a sworn police officer, Jeverick knew the acceptable boundaries in which he was authorized to use deadly force, said Assistant Director in Charge Sundberg. His willful disregard of these rules resulted in Mr. Gilmore's tragic and untimely death. While no judicial process will adequately address the loss that the Gilmore family has suffered in this situation, we are committed to ensuring the fullest administration of justice on behalf of the victim and his family. As part of his guilty plea, the defendant admitted that his conduct constituted unconstitutional, unreasonable force, and that he acted willfully, in reckless disregard of Mr. Gilmore's Fourth Amendment right to be free from excessive force by police. He also admitted that his conduct created an extreme risk of death to Mr. Gilmore's Fourth Amendment right to be free from excessive force by police. He also admitted that his conduct created an extreme risk of death to Mr. Gilmore and was a gross deviation from a reasonable standard of care. This case was investigated by the FBI's Washington Field Office, with extensive assistance from the FBI laboratory, including the laboratory shooting reconstruction team. It is being prosecuted by the Fraud, Public Corruption, and Civil Rights section of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. Once again, I thank you for watching our crime videos each and every time. Please subscribe below and help us to expand our YouTube reach. Man who illegally returned to the United States after being deported was sentenced today to almost 3 months in federal prison. Ramon Garcia Cruz, age 41, a citizen of Mexico illegally present in the United States and residing in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, received the prison term after a December 18, 2023, guilty plea to 1 count of illegal reentry into the United States after having been deported. At the guilty plea, Garcia Cruz admitted he had previously been deported from the United States and illegally re-entered the United States without the permission of the United States government. Garcia Cruz was first removed from the United States in October 2014. Garcia Cruz was also deported in March 2015 following his February 2015 conviction in the United States District Court for the District of Texas for illegal entry into the United States. On November 14, 2023, immigration officials learned Garcia Cruz had illegally returned to the United States and found Garcia Cruz at the Linn County Jail following his arrest on state charges. Garcia Cruz was sentenced in Cedar Rapids by United States District Court Chief Judge C.J. Williams. Garcia Cruz was sentenced to 86 days. He must also serve a 1-year term of supervised release after the prison term. There is no parole in the federal system. Garcia Cruz is being held in the United States Marshal's custody until he can be turned over to immigration officials. The case was prosecuted by Assistant United States Attorney Daniel C. Tvedt and investigated by the Department of Homeland Security, Immigration, and Customs. Michael Ryan Mickelson, age 37, from Clear Lake, Iowa, has been charged with 1 count of possession of a firearm by a felon and person convicted of domestic violence. The charges are contained in an indictment filed on February 14, 2024, in United States District Court in Sioux City. The indictment alleges that from March 1, 2023, through October 3, 2023, Mickelson knowingly possessed a firearm and ammunition, having been previously convicted on 4 occasions of crimes punishable by imprisonment for a term exceeding 1 year and also convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence. If convicted, Mickelson faces a possible maximum sentence of 15 years imprisonment, a $250,000 fine, and 3 years of supervised release following any imprisonment. Mickelson appeared today in federal court in Sioux City and was held without bond. Mickelson's next appearance for a detention hearing is set for February 28, 2024. As with any criminal case, a charge is merely an accusation and a defendant is presumed innocent until and unless proven guilty. This case was brought as part of Project Safe Neighborhoods, PSN. PSN is the centerpiece Department of Justice's violent crime reduction efforts. PSN is an evidence-based program proven to be effective at reducing violent crime. Through PSN, a broad spectrum of stakeholders work together to identify the most pressing violent crime problems in the community and develop comprehensive solutions to address them. As part of this strategy, PSN focuses enforcement efforts on the most violent offenders and partners with locally based prevention and reentry programs for lasting reductions in crime. The case is being prosecuted by Assistant United States Attorney Kevin C. Fletcher and was investigated by the Clear Lake Police Department, Cerro Gordo County Sheriff's Office, Manly Police Department, Worth County Sheriff's Office, Iowa State Patrol, Cerro Gordo County Attorney's Office. New Orleans, Louisiana, on February 21, 2024, United States District Judge Sarah S. Vance sentenced Aaron Henderson, age 28, a resident of New Orleans, for violating the Federal Gun Control Act, announced U.S. Attorney Dwayne Evans. According to court records, Henderson pleaded guilty to possessing a firearm after being convicted of a felony. Henderson came to the attention of law enforcement after the New Orleans Police Child Abuse Unit received a video depicting Henderson in a residential room with a 3-year-old male juvenile. Henderson was armed with a Draco 7.62mm rifle, rapping lyrics to an unknown song. He encouraged the 3-year-old to pick up a handgun located under some clothing on the bed, and the 3-year-old picked up the handgun and began to wave it around. During all this time, Henderson was a convicted felon who was prohibited from possessing firearms. Judge Vance sentenced Henderson to 37 months in prison and 3 years of supervised release. He was also ordered to pay a mandatory special assessment fee of $100. This case is part of Project Safe Neighborhoods, PSN, a program bringing together all levels of law enforcement and the communities they serve. Thank you for staying to the end of this video. We really appreciate you, the community, for continuing to support. My name is Abby. Many thanks to Hartley, our content provider and owner of Crime Vlog Weekly. Please help us to gain 50,000 subscribers. Hit the button below.